In this video, I will share with you the top 5 things you have to be aware of before buying a Black Bay 58. So let's get started. As of right now, if you are looking to buy a watch within the, I want to say like 5K price bracket that isn't a compromise but a proper high-end luxury watch, you'd be silly not to take a closer look at the Tudor Black Bay 58. I have worn this watch now for over 2 years and also did a video on this exact same topic back then. But since the release of the first Black Bay 58, Tudor came out with a lot more variations of this model, so there are plenty of more things to consider now, which is why an update is long overdue for this video. That's why I'm not going to waste any more time and get right into the point number 1. So when it comes to the case of the Black Bay 58, I'm happy to let you know that they are, in case of size and dimensions, exactly the same in every model, but some people, especially if you are new to this hobby, get it oftentimes confused with the Black Bay Heritage due to the name. And so let's quickly take a look at the differences here. The regular Black Bay Heritage, which when we look at the current time, can sort of be seen as the predecessor of the Black Bay 58 and has a diameter of 41mm with a lug-to-lug of 50 and a height of 14.8mm, which is rather large and means that it's not overly well suited for wrists below a 175mm circumference, in case you are not into super large looking watches on your wrist. But luckily, the Black Bay 58 is solving this issue. The diameter in this one is now only 39mm, but the most important measurement is the thickness and the lug-to-lug. The 58 has a nice and sleek lug-to-lug of 47mm and a thickness of only 11.9. Those measurements are very close to a Rolex Submariner, which is another watch that works on most wrists. But there is one exception. If you are sporting a wrist with over 180mm circumference, you should really take your time and try on the watch a few times to really make sure that you like how it looks on your wrist, because especially larger wrists seem to kind of swallow up the Black Bay 58, making it look too small or sometimes even dainty. So yeah, make sure to try it on first, which is basically something I recommend for most watch purchases anyways. And on another note, it is important to mention that the bezel on this watch is not made from ceramic like most divers, but from aluminium. Aluminium tends to fade a bit over time in color and is more prone to scratches, but it also gives a watch this nice matte and vintage inspired look. So if you would rather want something a bit more shiny or modern within this price range, you might want to look at an Oris diver instead. The next point is something that's on a lot of people's minds right now. Like I said, the Black Bay 58 is one of the most popular Tudor watches, which also means that it can be an issue to actually buy one at an AD, but here are the good news. First, every Tudor, and yes, that includes the 58, is still rather or comparatively easy to get, well, compared to Rolex, so everyone who held their breath now can, breathe and let it out. Most of the times it's enough to ask a couple of ADs if they have the 58 in stock that you want, and that should get you your 58 within a year or so. And the second part of the good news is that the Black Bay 58's grey market price isn't as insane or over the top as we have seen with other watches. For example, if you would want to get a Rolex Submariner right now, without having to be on a so-called list of people who are interested in it or wait lists, instead of paying the 9K at an AD, you would have to spend at least 14K on the grey market. And when we look at the Black Bay 58, things are still rather tame in comparison to that. So the standard Black Bay 58 retails for about $3,700 US. And here's also where today's sponsor comes into play, CHRONEXT. Because if you head over and check out CHRONEXT, you can see that the Black Bay 58 in black is not only available right away, it starts at about $4,290, which is about $590 more than retail. But if you want, you can use my code JENNITUDOR to save another $200 US, which brings you even closer to the retail price. I have personally used CHRONEXT to buy watches before, like my Rolex Yachtmaster 37, for which I'm still trying to make the nickname White Orca happen. So yeah, help me with that. Anyways, you could either have a bit of patience and wait until your watch is available at an AD, or you could head right over to chronext.com to get yours within the next 2 or 3 days, but pay a bit over retail for it. Okay, so the next point is a little something that most people probably won't even notice at first, and then perhaps something some people love the most about it. For me personally though, it is one of the biggest drawbacks of this watch, and that is the date, because the Black Bay 58 doesn't have a date. But let's look at the pros of this first. A missing date usually means that the movement is also missing a complication. So when setting the watch, you don't have to consider much, like not setting a watch within a date switch time or something like that. Additionally, a missing date window means that there's usually a perfect symmetry on the dial. I know that some people are really into perfect symmetry, so on this watch there's nothing that ruins it. But for me personally, I still end up preferring a date on my watch, mainly because I never know what day it is. Having a date is just very practical, you know. So yeah, if you are unsure about it, whether or not you want a date, you should really check and see whether or not this might be a deal breaker for you before getting a Black Bay 58. For point number 4, I would like to talk about the bracelet and the clasp. Here we have 2 points that could potentially bother you if you decide to go for a Black Bay 58. Well, first up is the general look of the bracelet. Tudor decided to go for the faux rivet look for pretty much all of their watches. Actual rivets like that used to be of structural importance because they were holding the links together, but those rivets on current Tudor watches are purely for aesthetic reasons. They are meant to underline the vintage spirit of these watches, but it is something a lot of people within the watch community agree on when they say that Tudor would have been better off omitting them altogether. The second point is about the comfort of wear though. With the Black Bay 58 bronze boutique only edition being the only exception, none of the other Black Bay 58 versions have any form of quick adjustments on their clasps. So that means when your wrist starts to fluctuate in size a bit, which is something a lot of people typically experience during, you know, the warmer times, you have to whip out a watch tool to make your watch fit right again. And the same goes for the colder months, of course. If the weather cools down and your arms don't swell up as much, your watch could start to feel too loose, and well, you gotta get that tool back out again. So for me, it means that I wear my Black Bay 58 a bit less tight than some of my other watches, because I really dislike the feeling of, you know, having the circulation in my hand being cut off by my watch. A bit over a year ago, you didn't really have much choice. You would have to get the matte black Black Bay 58 with rose gold color accents or nothing at all. But since July of 2020, Tudor released, believe it or not, 5 more versions of their Black Bay 58, and since then I'll also get a lot of questions from people who are, you know, unsure about which of these Black Bay 58s would be the best for them in case one cannot decide. So if you have waited for this question, I want to make it very short. Take the black one. And yes, of course, as with most things in life, this is very subjective, at least for the most part. But hear me out, because I got a solid reason for this answer. First of all, there's the gold version, for example, which is with a price tag of $16,800. Simply too expensive for a Tudor. I mean, I like how it looks, but for that money, I would go for a different watch. It might even be enough to go for a A. Lange & Söhne at this point. In terms of, you know, the looks, I would prefer the silver or the 925 58, but just like the full bronze edition, I wouldn't recommend it if you're just starting out because of the following. Both watches are made from materials that will change in appearance over time, which means that perhaps even within a few weeks you can end up with a very different looking watch. And if you are not 100% on board with that change, you'll be having a hard time. I mean, no one can tell for sure how it's going to end up looking, as it really comes down to the makeup of your skin, but yeah, keep that in mind. And so that leaves us with the navy blue and the black Black Bay 58s. We, and by that I mean my husband and I, we sometimes do share watches. We had both of them at home and ended up selling the navy blue after a couple of months. And this comes down to personal preference, but the all blue steel silver combo just felt a bit too cold and just overall too sterile for that look of the watch. And so the black one has this perfect balance of warmth and coolness for the steel. And then there's the rose gold and the matte black fit perfectly with the homage design of the watch. And that's just a fantastic combo. Right, so now you know about the 5 things you should be aware of before buying a Black Bay 58 with the added update to all the new releases since the black one came out. But before you go out and buy your dream 58, there's one thing I really want you to know. Do not buy this watch as a substitute for a Rolex. I know it is really difficult to get a Rolex right now, and I also know that there are plenty of people out there who are looking at the Black Bay 58 as a substitute for a Rolex Submariner, but buyer's remorse is a real thing, and these two watches couldn't be more different, though you know, they share a lot of objective characteristics. But if that is not the case and you would really like to get a Black Bay 58, then go for it. If you consider all of the 5 points I've just mentioned in this video, there is basically not a lot that can go wrong at this point. And so now if you want, you can go and check out my other videos I did on the multiple Black Bay 58s. As always, I would like to thank today's sponsor CHRONEXT for supporting the channel, and thank all of you for sticking around. If you have enjoyed this video, you can give it a thumbs up. It really helps a lot. And if you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to my channel so you get notified whenever I post a new one, and then I will see you in my next one. Bye!